Welcome to the In My Opinion Show with Ron Barry Robinson and friends. I am Henry Hatter, your co-host this afternoon. To view the show, please go to YouTube, Facebook, and type in capital letters, RBR IMO. I have an excellent program this afternoon. The program will be slightly different from what we've seen in the past. And the In My Opinion Show, generally, we bring you the voices of the community, the moms and dads, the family, who have stories to share with you. In addition to that, we strive to bring you other types of voices, like subject matter experts from industry, from the clergy, from union experts, and the business community. Examples we've heard members from the clergy, we've heard members from the Supreme Court, we've heard members from the education community, basically the Flint Schools District, we've heard from other school districts. We have heard a number of business leaders on this program. It is our hope to stimulate your thinking, your imagination, and resolve to action, solutions to problems that we find that are important in this community. Today, I have a guest, second best to nobody we've had on the show in the past. He is a sculptor from Clio, Mount Morris, and he's very important to this community, very important to industry, very important to all of those segments of the industry that we've talked about. He is Joe Rundell from Clio. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you very much.
Before I get started, I would like to read for you a definition of sculpture. And then I'm going to come back to you and ask you to expound on that. But when I looked in the dictionary for sculpture, it says, sculpture is a branch of the visual arts that operates in 3 dimensions. Do you know how difficult it is to work in 3 dimensions? Even for a mathematician or an engineer or other people who deal with this. Unless you have to be good to be at that, able to do that. Joe, please tell us a little bit about who you are, where you educated yourself, and where you live, and so on. Use about 1 minute to do that.
Okay, I was born in Owasso, 1940. Later on, I went to work for Chevrolet and put in 30 years there. And most of that time we lived in Clio at that time, and we've been there for 42 years. During the time that I was at the V8 engine plant, I became a machine repairman, but at the same time I built muzzle-loading guns. I did artwork, and then lately I've just come to the sculpture world in about 1.5 years ago.
Joe, at the plant, what specific job assignments they give you that a curious person would be able to glean from that you had the sculpture potential?
Well, most of it you wouldn't have, because I started out first as a line operator. After I'd been there for 5 years, I went on an apprenticeship for machine repair, and in the last all but 2 years, I practiced as a tradesman, machine repairman. The last 2 years that I was at the V8 engine plant, my plant manager asked me if we could start an art department within the plant, and he wanted another person with me, and the other man's name was John Hildebrand. He's known as an airbrush artist, very good at what he does. that pretty well rounds out my career at the V8 engine plant.
But Joe, the work of a machine repairman is a guy that takes a bolt and tightens something up and uses his tolerance tools to make sure it fits in the ranges that for the tolerance to make sure that the system operates correctly. But a person who paints, does sculpture is completely disassociated from that. It would appear to me that tool and die, or maybe people who create prototypes of cars and systems, would be closer to becoming a sculptor than a machine repairman. Explain.
Well, there is a lot of difference. Being a machine repairman is something it's very disciplined. You have to use your imagination as a machine repairman, almost like you do as a sculptor, but in completely different ways. But you still have to think about how to accomplish the repair of a particular machine, and you have to know your subject. And it's the same way with sculpture. You need to know your subject and just go at it. The sculpture, sometimes it takes a while before it starts to look like the person that you want, but you just keep with it, and by and by it's all done.
What I wanted to do here, Joe, was give our audiences out there, worldwide audience, kind of a thumbnail sketch of who you are and how incredible it is for you to make that transition from a machine repairman to a sculptor now that's painting commissioned systems for public policy and institutional interest. So let me ask you, how did you get through, this is the last question before we go to some of our members that in the display. But how did you get to become a sculptor? This is the thing that's eating at me, and I'm sure a lot of other people. Becoming an accomplished sculptor without going to a prominent United States college or university of engineering, sculpture, or architecture. How did you manage to get that and to be as accomplished you are? You must have had something else going on for you.
Well, when I was young, I was like every other student. My father died when I was 10 years old, and I liked airplanes of the Second World War, so I started drawing them. And a lot of my buddies, they would ask me if I would draw pictures for them, P-51 Mustang, P-40 Warhawk, that type of thing. And so I found that that there was a need. Somebody wanted to see my work, and so I turned out work. I was lucky early on. I had a teacher, an art teacher. Her name was Miss Morris, and she was a traveling teacher. She would go to different schools in Owasso, and I think she took a special interest in me. I did notice that she took more time with me than she did with some of the other students, and I think that spurred me on. Later on, when I moved to Flint, and I attended Bentley High School, I had a teacher a lot like Miss Morris. And the teacher at Bentley, her name was Mrs. Kilburn, and her too, or she too, really took an interest in my artwork. When I finally graduated, and I was probably towards the bottom of my class in almost all the subjects, I graduated just by the skin of my teeth, but when they decided that they wanted to give an art award, and they hadn't given one before, they announced that they were going to give this art award, and one of the other students stood up. she'd taken everything, all the other awards, so she kind of thought she was going to take this one too. But then they called out my name, and there she was out on the end of her limb, and the saw had just broken through, and down she went. But anyway, so I got that award, and then I went to Hawk and Wright Advertising Agency in Flint on 212 Stevens Street downtown, 1959, and I applied for a job as a commercial artist, and they took me on, and I was there for 2 years. I was only making $1 an hour, and then I got a chance to go to work at Chevrolet V8 engine plant, and they started me out at $2.49 an hour. That was 2.5 times.
Joe, what a great story. I want to remind part of our audience, if you're a teacher or you're a student, if you listen to Joe's story, it tells how important it is for a teacher to inspire her subjects or his subjects. Because from this inspiration goes accomplishments, genius even. And for students who think that they are throwaway kids, forget it. Because Joe just gave you a great inspirational story. I hope you take heed to it. Joe, your story is so reminiscent of so many other stories that I've had. Like, for example, Henry Ford. He was not a man of scholar. He was not a scholarly man. He was not a man of letters. As a matter of fact, they were asked him in 1916, how did he deserve making $1 million a day? You probably remember the story because we talked about it. And then there was, of course, Abraham Lincoln, a man that would have been considered, if you had to use letters, throwaway people. Became one of our great presidents. So I want to thank you for that, and I'm so glad that you're part of our community and that you've accomplished all that you did. And I want to get on to some of the sculptures. You know a lot about, say, the early automobile pioneers. Who were these people?
Well, the one that really put it all together was Billy Durant. Without Billy Durant, General Motors wouldn't have come to pass. He started out with J. Dallas Dort. He became a carriage maker with J. Dallas Dort, but what he accomplished was he went to a carriage show in Chicago, and he had designed a new carriage with a new spring system, and he sold a bunch of them. Dort Carriage Business thought that if he came back with orders for 100 or 200 carriages, it would be a great thing. But he came back with an order of 600 and some carriages per month, and so that pushed Dort Carriage Company and I think Patterson Carriage Company into the fore. This was just around the turn of the century. And then along came the automobile. At first, Billy Durant didn't like it. He thought it was smelly and it was noisy and it just didn't. It wasn't his type of a machine. But he finally decided that this was the future. So he grabbed a hold of David Buick. David Buick had made 1.5 cars, and so they started manufacturing the Buick car. This was around 1903. The Buick car became very reliable. At one point, it could climb almost any other car on hills and things, and so. Orders came in quite a bit for the new Buick. 1912 came around, and Billy Durant asked his race driver Louis Chevrolet to build a new car for him. they brought.
But you haven't created General Motors Corporation yet.
We're getting to it.
Okay.
We're getting to it. General Motors Corporation was created in 1908. Billy Drant brought in Oldsmobile. They brought in Cadillac, and now Louis Chevrolet had built a car for him, and the Chevrolet car for Billy Drant was very, very important, because when he lost control of General Motors later on, he was able to put his powers behind the Chevrolet car and come back into General Motors and take the top position again. But it was the Chevrolet car that allowed him to do it.
And Billy Grant had a lot of problems with learning how to finance the institution. It was like a loose confederation where people just donated money to the corporation. And how did it get started as a corporate? How did they really demand where the corporation was dominant over the divisions?
Mostly, all this came from confidence in Billy Drant to be able to produce. Billy Drant was a dynamic person. He always went about 110 miles an hour, but he accomplished what he wanted to accomplish. So that brought in financial institutions, and he decided that he wanted to build his cars right here in Flint, Michigan. And along with that, he decided that at that time Flint had a lot of lumber industry, and the automobile was made, the bodies were made of lumber at that time. He brought in another guy. I believe this was also in 1903. He brought in C.S. Mott out of New York. C.S. Mott was an axle builder, and C.S. Mott was able to get finances for his company, but combine it with the financial background of Billy Drant. And he became a large stockholder in General Motors right from the beginning.
Hey, Joe, I know that time is really running out. We got a lot of ground to cover. Can I just kind of jump on some other things while
Yes,
we're
sir.
talking? The personalities who formed General Motors, you must know a lot about those. Could you just briefly tell us, bring those people to life so that our audience can see who they are? Just use about 1 minute on each one.
Okay.
Please.
I'll start with Charles Nash. Charles Nash was a General Motors president for a short amount of time, and then he started building Nash cars in Kenosha, Wisconsin. So, and that became American Motors. That's what most people remember today. They don't remember the Nash, but they do remember American Motors. The person that preceded him was Walter P. Chrysler, and Walter P. Chrysler was one of the most dynamic men in the world. He had educated himself, and he was a machine repairman, and then he decided that he wanted to become an engineer. So he went to engineering school, became an engineer, and he was with a railroad company. He had nothing to do with the automobile company or automobile interests at all at that time. But Billy Drant heard about him and sent for him. Walter P. Chrysler at that time had built he was finally making around $12,000 a year, and that was a lot of money in those days. So Billy Drant made him an offer. He said, "Come to work for me, and I'll give you $16,000 a month, and I'll give you either a salary of $500,000 a year or $500,000 in General Motors stock." The only thing that Walter P. Chrysler said was nothing. It was silent for a moment, and then Chrysler said, would you repeat that? And that was the beginning of the association between Chrysler and General Motors.
Well, and some of the other, for example, Albert Chevrolet. Who am I looking at here on the table?
Well, this is Louis Joseph Chevrolet. He was born Christmas of 1875, I believe, and died June the 6th, 1941. He smoked too much. That's one thing he shouldn't have done, but Billy Durant didn't like him smoking cigarettes, and at one time told him that gentlemen smoke cigars, not cigarettes. And Chevrolet kind of blew up, and out of the office he went. He had a very short temper, but he was a race driver and one of the best. In 1915, he won the Indianapolis 500, and he and two brothers started kind of a speed company. They actually built speed equipment for Model T engines, and that went on for quite a while. Finally, when the Model T went out and Henry Ford brought in the Model A, that kind of put a kibosh on his Model T stuff.
Folks, just because I feel the compression of time and we have a lot to cover, I'm going to ask you to, I'm going to ask Joe to appeal to you to come down when they unveil David Chevrolet and C.S. Mott and all of those statues. Would you like to tell us about that coming up in August very shortly?
Okay, in August the 17th, we'll be unveiling Billy Durant. And when he's unveiled, he'll be down in the U of M parking lot between Kersley and First Street. They're putting him between Louis Chevrolet and David Buick, and it's very appropriate they do that because he's the one that got both of those into it and started the Buick Motor Division and the Chevrolet Automobile Division.
And this event will be back to the bricks, will it?
It will, and it'll be on the 17th of August.
How is it attended? Is there lots of people? Are there dignitaries? Are there kids? Are there teachers? Is it part of the community that comes to? What does this do for Flint? By the way, you might mention that. Why all of a sudden people are interested in Flint downtown and the automobile industry?
Well, the automobile industry, of course, built Flint. But I'm going to give credit to Al Hatch. He started the Back to the Bricks movement, and that's a giant car show right in the middle of Flint. For the 4-day period, it'll bring in somewhere around 25,000 cars will be involved, and close to 500,000 people will come to Flint because of that. And they're all of those people are going to they have their needs, and they're going to spend money to fulfill those needs.
Yeah, okay. Joe, how did you get commissioned for this job? Now, normally people would, if you're going to get someone to do a job this monumental, there's a process that they use for commissioning a person to do that. How did you get this commission to do all of the statutes?
I believe this came through Al Hatch. Al Hatch asked me at one time if I would agree to be their art director for Back to the Bricks. When I went for the first meeting, I decided that I would like to do some sculptures. I knew that 8 of them were going to come up and were going to be done. I was not a known sculptor. I took some pictures and books that my engravings had been in, and a photo album, and I brought 2 sculptures that I had done one in 1986 and the other one in 1987, but they were only busts. They were only the upper part of the torso. But they thought that, yeah, we think that he can do this. And I think along with that is that that I would do it at a lesser amount of money than most others.
Who is your favorite sculptor? Just any. There's lots of sculpture types: Greek, Roman, etc. There's current. In about 25 seconds, can you give me who you might think is a good sculptor? A contemporary, even.
Phidias from Greek times. Michelangelo, of course, everybody knows Michelangelo. Another is Jean-Antoine Houdon, a Frenchman.
Did they influence your work?
They definitely did.
Okay. Now, Joe, you did guns. Give me about 25 seconds on that. Time's closing down on me.
Okay. I've done engraving on firearms from 1961 until now.
Okay, Joe, looking ahead, now your sculpture will be here for thousands of years yet. How would you like to be remembered?
I'd like to be remembered as a sculptor.
Like Michelangelo.
Oh, I'm not sure that that we're going to go to those lofty.
Pericles.
Yeah.
Some of those. Great Roman times. Well, Joe, must bring the show to a close. It's great having you. I hope you'll come back again. I hope that our audience will come to Flint, visit Back to the Bricks to see you unveil all of these great statues that will be here for many, many years after we're gone.
What about Jefferson?
Oh, yeah. Would you like to talk about what's in the future for you? 10 seconds.
What's in the future for me is one of the Tuskegee Airmen, a person that I've met and admire.
Okay, we will bring that. We will talk about this at a different show. Okay. Now we must bring the show to the close. I want to thank our technical crew. I want to thank our guest, Alexander Jefferson, and I'd like to thank all of you who watched the show today. And I'd say stay focused.